Welcome back to Campfire Horror Tales. Tonight, as thunder rumbles and the rain hits your window, we'll dive into 6 true horror stories that happen during violent storms. These are the moments when nature turns against us. When something knocks at your door, whispers your name through the static, or watches you in the flash of lightning. So turn down the lights, grab a blanket, and listen closely. Because sometimes, the storm outside isn't the only thing waiting in the dark. I swear this really happened to me last fall. I've told a few people, but no one believes it. I guess I wouldn't either if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes. It was the kind of storm that made the air feel thick, like the whole world was holding its breath. I was driving back from a weekend fishing trip up near Willow Lake when the thunder started. Within minutes, the road turned into a blur of rain and fog. My phone had no signal, my wipers barely worked, and I could hardly see 10 feet ahead. When lightning hit somewhere close, I caught a glimpse of a sign half hidden behind the trees. Willow Lake Cabins, 1 mile. I didn't remember any cabins in the area, but I figured anything with a roof would do. The gravel road was almost washed out, but I managed to reach a small clearing where an old cabin stood. The place looked abandoned, paint peeling, windows fogged over, the front door hanging slightly open. But the rain was coming down so hard that stepping out of the car felt like walking into a waterfall. Inside, the cabin smelled like wet wood and dust. My flashlight beam danced across empty shelves, an overturned chair, and a single cracked mirror hanging on the far wall. I closed the door behind me, trying to shake the cold from my hands. The storm outside howled like something alive. I found some dry firewood stacked near the old stove. When I tried to light it, I realized the matches were still in my car. Just my luck. I sat down on the floor, hugging my jacket tight, watching lightning flash through the windows. That's when I saw it. In the brief flicker of light, I could have sworn someone was standing outside the window. A man, tall, broad-shouldered, his face hidden in the glare. The thunder crashed right after, and when I looked again, he was gone. I told myself it was just my imagination. The storm, the cold, the isolation, it was messing with me. But then came another flash. This time, the reflection in the cracked mirror behind me showed that same man standing right over my shoulder. I spun around so fast, I nearly slipped on the wet floor. Nobody there. Just the wind creaking through the gaps in the walls. I thought about running back to the car, but the storm outside sounded like it could tear the roof off. I decided to stay put until it eased up. I moved the chair closer to the mirror, not wanting to look at it, but unable to turn away. Minutes turned into hours. Each flash of lightning made my heart jump. And then, in one particularly long burst, I saw something new in the reflection. Movement. A dark hand pressed against the inside of the glass, fingers spreading, like someone was trapped behind it. I stumbled backward, tripping over the chair. The thunder rolled again, shaking the whole cabin. The mirror went dark, but a faint tapping sound started echoing from it. Slow, deliberate, like fingernails against glass. I shouted, something stupid like, "Who's there?" But my own voice sounded drowned out by the storm. The tapping stopped. Then, after a long pause, 3 knocks came from the other side of the mirror. I ran for the door. I didn't care about the rain anymore. I just needed to leave. But when I pulled the door open, the wind nearly tore it from my hands. Sheets of rain hid everything beyond the porch. I took 1 step outside and froze. The man from the window stood at the tree line, just barely visible through the storm. Lightning flashed again, and this time I saw his face. My face. He smiled. And I swear I felt it in my own skin. Then the thunder cracked, and he was gone again. I don't remember running back inside, but I must have. I remember grabbing my phone, praying for a signal, but the screen stayed black. I sat there in the dark, trembling, staring at the mirror. At some point, exhaustion took over. The tapping came back, softer this time. I tried to ignore it. I remember closing my eyes and thinking about home. When I woke up, the storm had passed. The morning light filtered through the windows, calm and golden. Everything looked normal. No footprints, no broken glass, no sign that anyone else had been there. But when I stood up and looked in the mirror, I saw the handprints. 5 dark smudges on the inside of the glass, perfectly clear against the dust. I ran out of that cabin and didn't stop until I reached the main road. My car was still there, half covered in leaves. It started on the first try. Later, when I told a park ranger about it, he said those cabins had been closed since the 1980s. There'd been a drowning at Willow Lake. Some fisherman who got caught in a sudden storm and never made it back. They found his gear in one of those cabins, hanging from a hook by the door. I didn't say anything, but sometimes, when it rains hard enough to rattle the windows, I see flashes of that same face in the reflection just for a split second. And I always make sure not to look too long. My grandpa used to say thunder wasn't just sound. It was something calling. He grew up in rural Pennsylvania, in one of those places where people still leave food out for spirits and hang horseshoes above their doors. When I was a kid, he'd sit on the porch during storms, hat pulled low, staring out at the lightning like he was waiting for something. One night, when I was about 10, I asked him why he never got scared of thunder. He smiled, that kind of small, tired smile old men give when they don't want to answer. Then he said, "You only need to be scared when you hear 3 rumbles in a row without seeing lightning. That's not thunder, kid. That's something else trying to find its way back." I laughed, thinking it was one of his stories. But he looked at me dead serious. "If you ever hear it, don't look outside. And whatever you do, don't answer when it calls your name." I didn't think about it again for years. Until the night he died. It was mid-October, and a massive storm rolled over the valley. The kind that makes the house shake, that deep, crawling thunder that feels like it's coming from inside your chest. Mom said Grandpa had gone out to his porch before it started, like he always did. When the lightning hit close, I remember hearing her whisper, "Not again," and running to the window. I saw his silhouette out there, standing in the rain, not moving an inch. We called for him, but he didn't respond. By the time my uncle reached the porch, Grandpa was gone. Just his hat lay there, soaked through. The search lasted all night. They found him the next morning down by the edge of the woods, barefoot, face turned toward the sky. No one could explain how an 80-year-old man walked a mile through that storm. The coroner said heart failure. My mom said it was the call. After the funeral, I stayed a few nights at Grandpa's house to help pack things. The storm had left the whole property muddy and quiet. The power was still out, so I used a lantern to get around. That first night, I found his old notebook sitting on the table. The cover was warped from moisture, the pages filled with scribbles, weather dates, strange markings, and phrases like, "It followed the thunder," and "Don't answer the third call." I remember feeling a chill. That had nothing to do with the cold. Around midnight, it started raining again. The wind whistled through the cracks in the siding. I was sitting in Grandpa's old recliner, trying to convince myself that I wasn't scared. That's when I heard it. One long roll of thunder, deep and heavy, but no flash of lightning. Then another. And another. 3 in a row. The sound seemed to move closer each time, like something walking across the fields. I turned off the lantern, heart pounding. The house went black except for the dim gray glow of the storm outside. That's when I heard the voice. It wasn't loud, just clear enough to make my blood run cold. It came from the porch, the same spot Grandpa used to sit. A man's voice, low and calm, saying my name once, twice. I froze. Every instinct in me screamed to look, to check, to make sure it wasn't a neighbor. But my grandpa's words came back like lightning in my head. Don't look outside. Don't answer when it calls your name. The voice called again, this time quieter, almost pleading. I swear I recognized the tone. It sounded like him. I pressed my hands over my ears, whispering to myself that it wasn't real, that grief was messing with me. The thunder rolled again, shaking the floorboards. I counted to 10, then 20. Finally, silence. When I dared to peek through the curtain, the porch was empty. Just rain and mud. But there were footprints, bare, leading away from the steps toward the woods. The next morning, I followed them until they vanished into the brush. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I needed proof that I wasn't losing my mind. About 100 yards out, I found something half buried in the wet soil. Grandpa's old pocket knife, the initials J.R. carved into the handle. That night, the storm came back. I didn't stay. I drove home, didn't even pack the rest of my things. Mom sold the property a few months later. I've had plenty of thunderstorms since then. But sometimes, late at night, I'll hear that same rhythm again. 3 long rumbles, no lightning. And every single time, I turn off the lights, cover the mirrors, and wait for it to pass. Because I know if I ever hear my name again during a storm, I won't be able to stop myself from answering. This happened 2 summers ago, and I still don't drive at night when there's rain in the forecast. I was on my way back from visiting my parents in upstate New York. 5 hours of empty roads and farmland. The forecast said light showers, but somewhere around midnight, the drizzle turned into a full-blown thunderstorm. The kind of storm that swallows your headlights. I remember the rain hammering against the windshield so hard, it felt like it was shaking the whole car. The wipers couldn't keep up. I turned off the radio just to focus. But after a few minutes of that heavy silence, I decided some background noise might help. I hit scan. All I got was static. Then, out of nowhere, a voice broke through. Faint, distant, but definitely human. Like, "Can you hear me?" It startled me so badly that I almost swerved. I looked at the display. The frequency was just numbers jumping around, no station name. The voice came again, crackly, but clear this time. "Please, don't hang up." It wasn't a phone, but that's exactly what it sounded like. A woman's voice, trembling. I turned the knob back and forth, trying to find a normal channel, but every station just blended into that same low hum of static. Then, between bursts of thunder, I heard her say my name. She didn't scream it. She said it. Calm, soft, like someone who knew me. "Ryan, why did you leave me in the rain?" My heart dropped. There's only one person who used to say my name that way. My sister, Emily. She drowned 4 years ago. I sat there frozen, trying to tell myself it was just a coincidence. Maybe some prank broadcast, or my mind playing tricks on me. But the voice didn't stop. "You promised you'd come back." I turned the radio off. The cabin went silent, except for the thunder. I pulled over onto the shoulder, took a few deep breaths, told myself I was tired. But then, from the speakers, even though the radio was off, came a faint whisper. "Look behind you." I didn't. I couldn't. My whole body went numb. I started the car again and pushed the gas, speeding down that slick road. I didn't care where I was going. I just needed distance. After a few miles, the storm got worse. The sky was flashing constantly now, lightning every few seconds, the thunder overlapping itself. The rain sounded like gravel on the roof. Then, without me touching anything, the radio switched back on. The dial spun on its own, tick, 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 before landing back on that same dead frequency. The static cleared for just a second, and her voice came through again, louder this time. "I waited, Ryan." I hit the dashboard with my fist. "Stop it!" I yelled, even though it made no sense. The headlights flickered, and for one split second, during a flash of lightning, I saw her reflection in the rearview mirror, drenched, pale, eyes open too wide. Then the car died. No lights, no engine, nothing but the pounding rain. I tried to start it again, but the key wouldn't even click. I sat there gripping the wheel, breathing so hard the windows fogged up. That's when I noticed the faint sound coming from the passenger seat. The seatbelt buckle was tapping, just barely moving, like someone was flicking it with their finger. Ryan. The voice was right beside me now. Not from the radio, not from behind, beside. I turned my head. The passenger seat was empty, but wet. Water pooled where no rain could have reached. The smell was the same as that night, lake water and mud. I reached for the door handle, desperate to get out, when the radio hissed again. A man's voice this time, low and mechanical. Do not exit the vehicle. I froze. The static pulsed in rhythm with the thunder. Then the woman's voice returned, sharper now, cutting through it. Why didn't you save me? Something cold brushed against my arm, fingers light but real. I yelled, kicked the door open, and stumbled into the storm. The rain felt like knives. I ran toward the tree line until I couldn't see the car anymore. When I finally looked back, lightning lit up the road. And there she was, standing beside the driver's door, head tilted, dripping. The passenger seat belt hung open, swinging slowly. I didn't go back for the car until morning. The storm had passed. Sunlight was filtering through the mist. Everything looked normal, the road dry, the air clean. But the radio? It was still on. The volume turned all the way down, the frequency locked on that same static. The mechanic said the radio had shorted out a long time ago, probably from moisture. He couldn't explain how it turned on by itself, or how my battery was dead, but the display was still glowing faintly. I sold the car a week later. Now, every time a storm rolls in, I turn off everything. Phone, radio, lights. Because the last time I heard thunder like that, I could have sworn I heard her voice in it, whispering, "Don't drive away this time." My old neighbor, Mark, used to photograph storms. Not in the artsy Instagram way. He wasn't posting filtered skies or sunset rainbows. He chased lightning like it was something personal. He had this ancient Nikon and a tripod held together with duct tape. And whenever a storm rolled in, you could find him standing out in the open field behind our houses, waiting for the next flash. He once told me, "Lightning shows you what's really out there. The stuff you can't see until it's too late." I thought he was just being poetic. I was 17 when he moved in next door, and at first I thought he was just one of those weird loner types. He was probably in his late 40s, quiet, polite, but always a little off. He lived alone, no family, no visitors. His garage was full of camera equipment and developed film hanging on wires like laundry. He'd knock on my door sometimes to show me his new shots. I'd humor him. The photos were actually beautiful. Forks of white light over cornfields, dark clouds lit from within, reflections of storms in puddles. But after a few months, the picture started to change. One evening, he came by during a thunderstorm, soaked to the bone, clutching a stack of prints. "You have to see this," he said, voice shaking. I spread the photos on my kitchen table, and my stomach turned. In every one, just barely visible under the lightning glow, there was a figure, tall, thin, standing in the background, sometimes near trees, sometimes right behind Mark himself, caught as a blur in the reflection of a window. I asked him if someone was helping him, maybe a friend. He shook his head violently. "They only show up when it storms," he said. "I think they're drawn to it. And they're getting closer." I laughed it off at the time, told him he needed sleep. But he didn't smile. He just said, "Next time, I'll prove it." A week later, the biggest storm of the summer hit. Sheets of rain, thunder that made the walls shake. I was reading when I saw flashes through the blinds, not lightning, but camera flashes. I looked outside. There he was, standing in the middle of the field, tripod set up, taking picture after picture as lightning tore through the sky. I remember thinking it was insane. He could have been hit. But curiosity won. I grabbed a jacket and ran outside, yelling for him to get back in. He didn't even turn around, just kept taking photos. Every flash of lightning lit up his silhouette. And then, for the briefest second, I saw someone else standing beside him. Another shape. Taller, like smoke frozen in place. Then came a blinding strike. So close it felt like the air itself split open. When my vision cleared, Mark was gone. The tripod lay twisted in the mud. I searched the field with my flashlight, calling his name, but all I found was his camera. Lens cracked, still warm to the touch. The police showed up the next morning. No sign of him. They chalked it up to a lightning fatality. Maybe his body washed into the creek by the rain. No one ever found him. About a week later, I got a package in the mail. No return address, just my name written in block letters. Inside were a dozen photographs, all from that night. Most were overexposed, just blurs of light and shadow. But in one of them, I could clearly see Mark, mid-step, turning toward the camera, mouth open like he was shouting. Behind him, the shape. Only this time, it wasn't distant. It was right behind him. And behind that, I noticed something else. The faint outline of my own house. My window glowing in the background. That night, I couldn't sleep. The rain had started again, tapping against the glass. I told myself it was just coincidence. But then lightning flashed, and for a split second, the window reflected something that wasn't me. Someone standing behind me, holding a camera. I still have that photo. It's locked in a box under my bed. Sometimes, during heavy storms, I swear I hear the sound of a shutter clicking outside my house, always in rhythm with the thunder. And once, only once, when lightning lit up my backyard, I saw a figure standing by the fence, drenched, holding something shiny in his hand. The next morning, there was a wet footprint on my porch, and a single photo slid under the door. It was me, standing at the window, with something tall behind me, its hand on my shoulder. It happened last October, on one of those nights when the storm feels endless, when the thunder doesn't roll but stays, vibrating in your chest. My husband was out of town for work, and I was alone in our house just outside of Portland, We live on a quiet road with no street lights, surrounded by tall pine trees that always seem to move, even when the wind's calm. That night, they were bending and swaying like they were alive. The rain had started around 8, but by 10 it was pounding the roof so hard I could barely hear the TV. The power flickered twice and then went out completely, leaving me in that thick, humming silence that only happens during a storm. I lit a few candles and tried to convince myself that I wasn't nervous. But then the wind shifted, and I heard something. A slow, uneven knock at the door. 3 times. Then silence. At first I thought it was just the storm messing with me. A loose shutter or branch hitting the siding. But then it came again, louder this time. Knock, knock, knock. I grabbed my phone, but of course there was no signal. The Wi-Fi was down too. Typical. I crept toward the front door, every step echoing louder than it should have. When I reached it, I hesitated. "Who's there?" I called. A man's voice answered, muffled by the rain. "Sorry, I had an accident. My car skidded off the road. Can I use your phone?" It sounded off. Too calm for someone who just crashed. But I peeked through the small frosted window near the top of the door anyway. He was standing there in the rain, soaked from head to toe. I could barely see his face through the glass, just the shape of him, tall, broad, no umbrella. I noticed something strange. He wasn't shivering, not even moving. Just standing perfectly still. I swallowed hard. "There's a gas station 2 miles down the road," I said. "They'll help you." He didn't move, didn't leave. "I can't walk that far," he said. "Please, just for a minute. I won't come inside." Every instinct in me screamed no. Something about the way he said it. Slow, deliberate, like he was testing how I'd react. "I'm calling the police," I said, even though my phone still had no service. I turned away from the door and started toward the kitchen, trying to sound confident. That's when I heard the handle jiggle. Not hard, just once. A soft, metallic click, like he was checking if it was locked. Then silence again. The candles flickered from the draft that crept under the door. I could hear the storm outside, but there was another sound mixed with it. Breathing. Long, steady breaths just on the other side of the wood. I backed away slowly. My mind was racing. Should I go out the back door? Hide? Grab something for defense? Then, from somewhere near the front window, a faint tapping started. I froze. Lightning flashed, and for a split second, his face lit up in the glass. Pale, eyes wide open, mouth twisted in something that wasn't quite a smile. He wasn't knocking anymore. He was staring in. I ran to the hallway closet and pulled out the old landline phone my husband insisted on keeping for emergencies. I didn't even know if it worked. But when I plugged it in, thank God, there was a dial tone. I called 911, whispering every word. The operator said officers were on their way, to stay inside, to keep the doors locked. But before I could even respond, I heard another sound. Footsteps. Not outside, inside. Slow, wet, coming from the living room. I clutched the phone so hard it slipped out of my hand and clattered to the floor. The footstep stopped when it hit. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The only light was from the candles flickering down the hall. Then thunder boomed again, and for a split second the hallway lit up. And I saw him, standing at the end of it, soaked, motionless, his face blank, eyes reflecting the candlelight like glass. He raised one hand, not toward me, but toward the wall. And then everything went black. When I opened my eyes again, I was lying on the floor. The phone was buzzing beside me, the operator calling my name. I picked it up, shaking, trying to explain what happened. They said the officers were minutes away. When they arrived, they searched the house top to bottom. No sign of forced entry, no footprints. The door was locked from the inside. But when they checked the porch, they found something strange. Muddy water pooled right in front of the door, not from the rain, but shaped like two perfect shoe prints, facing inward. A few days later, when my husband checked the security camera footage, we both froze. It showed me walking to the door. Then nothing for about a minute, just static and lightning flashes. Then, for half a second before the feed cut out completely, the lens caught the reflection of a man's face in the glass. He wasn't outside. He was behind me. My older brother used to tell me a story about the summer the storm never ended. He swore it happened when he was a kid, said it wasn't just a storm, but something wrong with time itself. I never believed him, not really. But after what happened last month, I think he was telling the truth. He said it started in early September in the little town where he grew up. A nowhere place with a single gas station and a diner that never closed. The first night of the storm was normal enough. Lightning, thunder, wind in the trees. But by the second day, it still hadn't stopped. The rain just kept falling, hour after hour, like the sky had split open and forgotten how to close. The town started to flood. People lost power. The roads washed out. He told me that by the third night, no one could sleep. The thunder never came from the same direction twice. It was like it circled the town, roaring just out of sight. And then the weird part started. He said that around the fourth day, folks realized the clocks had stopped. Every one of them. Watches, digital displays, even those old wind-up ones. All frozen at 11:57. No one could explain it. They replaced batteries, rewound gears. Nothing worked. But it wasn't just the clocks. The phones, the radios, the TVs, all stuck on static. Even when the power came back for a few minutes at a time, every channel played the same faint sound underneath the white noise. Whispering. My brother said you could hear words if you listened long enough. But no one wanted to. On the fifth day, people started disappearing. Not in a dramatic way. No screams, No doors kicked open. They'd just be there one moment, gone the next. Their houses still locked, their lights still on. The rain got heavier. You couldn't see more than a few feet in front of you. Every flash of lightning lit up shapes in the distance, like people standing in the downpour, not moving. He said his mom told him to stay away from the windows. If you see them looking back, they'll take you too. By the 6th night, there were only a handful of people left in town. They gathered in the church at the top of the hill, the only place that hadn't flooded yet. They lit candles, prayed, listened to the thunder roll across the valley. That's when one of them noticed something. Every time the lightning flashed, the stained glass windows showed different faces. Not the saints that were supposed to be there. Strangers. Eyes wide, mouths open like they were screaming. When the next bolt struck, all the candles went out. My brother said he woke up on the church floor sometime later, soaked and freezing. The storm had finally stopped. The sky was clear. The air smelled wrong, like metal and ozone. He ran home, but the town was empty. Cars in driveways, doors open, meals still on tables, but no people. It was like everyone had just walked outside and never come back. He said he left that morning and never returned. I used to laugh when he told the story. He'd always end it the same way, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Sometimes, when it rains at night, I still hear the thunder from that storm, he'd say. And when I check the time, it's always 11:57. I didn't think about it again until 3 weeks ago. We had a storm move through here. Heavy rain, low clouds, lightning that flickered like a strobe. I woke up around midnight to the sound of my phone buzzing on the nightstand. When I picked it up, the screen said, "Unknown number." I answered without thinking. Static. Then faintly under the noise, I heard my brother's voice. It's starting again. The line went dead. I tried calling him back, but every time I did, the clock on my phone reset to 11:57. The power went out a few minutes later. The thunder rolled and rolled, and I realized it hadn't stopped since the call. I checked the window. Rain hammering the glass so hard it looked solid. And for a split second, when lightning struck, I saw silhouettes out there, dozens of them, standing perfectly still, facing the house. One was close enough that I could make out his face. My brother. It's been raining ever since. I've stopped keeping track of days. The clock on the wall still says 11:57. Sometimes, when the thunder gets loud enough, I hear whispering under it. Hundreds of voices saying something I can't quite make out. But I think I finally understand what they're saying. They're asking me to come outside.